Hi, Sam. It's so good to see you. It's been way too long. I am so happy to have the ability to talk to you, even though we're socially distanced and far away as you're off at college at Berkeley. But I really wanted to get your perspective as a youth leader in the movement to end child poverty, on what it was like to be able to vote for the first time in a presidential election this year.
Gosh, to be honest with you, I didn't know how much research goes into voting. Like, honestly, I was as I was reading the because we have a mail-in ballots. I actually voted in person, just because there was issues with like my ballot. But luckily UC Berkeley had like a couple of spots open with social distancing. But as I was reading like the props and everything, like there's so much research that one has to do prior. And I started thinking about my parents, like if they ever had the opportunity to vote, like the language that is used in some of these props and the research into like the people that you're voting for, it's a lot of information. And it's sort of like, how do you process it? How do you move forward with that information? How do you inform yourself well so that you can make the best decision, not just for yourself but for your community and ultimately for everybody? And so I think that as a first time voter, I knew there was research, I knew you had to, hit up Google and like really like who are your candidates? Who are, the people in even in your local government? Like that's really important. Um, and so I just really noticed that. And so it just got me thinking about the language of the props and how it's tricky. It's a tricky language to understand. And it's like, it even got me like thinking about like doubting yes, no, like what is it saying? And I'm like, I'm not the only one. If I'm like asking myself, if I'm wondering,
Mhm.
there's probably thousands and upon thousands wondering the same thing. And it's sort of like, how can we make it easier for voters to understand what they're voting for? Because
Yeah.
I think that at the end of the day, it comes down to understanding what you're voting for or who
Yeah.
you're voting for.
And the impact it's going to have on you and your community.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely.
Well, I'm just thrilled that you were able to do that and that you've had the resources to make informed decisions and even be able to go vote in person. We know it was just such a scary time to have to actually, risk your health to vote on behalf of like your family and friends and everyone
Mhm.
else that you want to see make a change. So how do you feel about the outcome? Like as a youth leader, what are you hoping for from this new administration, whether it's nationally or across the state?
Wow. It was definitely a nail biting election.
For
It
sure.
definitely was. I feel like I felt a lot of anxiety on what was going to happen, a lot of uncertainty, there's still a lot of uncertainty. You just never know with administrations. But our hope is to see change in a lot of different components, not just like nationwide, but like in our communities and like not, through different sectors of like education, health, you know, um, and it's like I look at where we're at now, and there's like so many things happening at a national scale, whether that's, we have BLM, we have, mental health, like accessibility, we have, just like school education and what that's looking like. Because it's all like also interconnected with each other, with one another. Um, and so being a student at UC Berkeley right now, I think I have a lot of experience with like the mental health side, because I've noticed how badly we have it with like the resources that are at our disposal here with like our counseling services and how it's not enough. And it's sort of like it's not enough across our country and how we have a rise actually in mental health. Um, and so it's sort of like, and now, there isn't, we're kind of slowly building that openness to talk about it,
Yeah.
to just to, really like sit down and talk about it, about what's happening, how are we dealing with it? We're more open, more receptive to reaching out for help. And it's sort of like when you're at that point and then there isn't anybody, there to help you, because there's also other people out there looking for the exact same resources that you are, but there's such a low amount. And it's sort of like, how can we fix that? And that's just like, and that's just across university campuses. I can't even imagine like nationwide with adults, with children, with the youth, that especially now that it's very uncertain, we have pandemic going on, it's a lot. And it's sort of like, how do you process all of that, and where do you go to find the resources to talk about it, to process it? And it's like, it's sadly, we don't have enough resources. And it's like, how are we gonna allocate, funds? How are we gonna allocate time and resources to certain communities, and like have that be accessible, and not just like be, like money driven, and like, how are we going to make the most money out of this? No, how about for a change? It's like, how can we best help? How can we best support you and your community and your state, without thinking about the end goal being money, or the end goal being some type of monetary like thing that's happening?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The pandemic has, really began to shine a light on, all the inequities that existed before, all the challenges, all the lack of investment in our community and access to quality services, mental health, healthcare, and the devastating results that we're having to weather in our communities and with our families, and the loss of loved ones, whether it's to COVID or other mental health issues. And so, really, I think what has made me most hopeful is having young people and the youth voice, such as yours, really pushing policymakers to make those investments and to prioritize the needs of young people, the needs of community. And so I'm just really thankful that you continue to be a leader in this movement, and that you continue to share your story and really advocate for those like yourself and others who really need the resources and support at this time. Is there anything else you want to share?
I think it got me thinking a lot about like my community, and like how a lot of people, because of the pandemic, also are losing jobs. And it just got me thinking about, funds, and how to like best support the families who don't qualify for unemployment, who don't have a social security, immigrant communities, like, how do you allocate funds for them? Because at the end of the day, it also affects their children, it affects them, it affects their livelihood. It's like, how are we working as a collective to help out all those communities that are like suffering? Like, what are the funds, the policies that are being made to really like help out the people who really need help? And I feel like time and time again, it's like we're constantly needing help, and it feels like we don't get the help that we need. And it's sort of like, people get tired of it. People get tired of always having to like ask and fight for like what should have already been provided, or what should be being provided, without having to ask. So it just got me thinking a lot about that. And it just, because my mom, also with her job in limbo, and because it's, how do you live, how do you make ends meet at the end of the day? And it's like, and I feel that we shouldn't be struggling with that at this point. It's like, we should have funds, we should have resources out there that are specifically designed to help in situations like these.
I mean, I think back to, you and I got to tour California together on a bus, talking about child poverty, talking with, families and children. And then we also, really stood together in the Cal EITC fight. And that was one thing this year that just was so important to us, to make sure that, folks with I-10s in the immigrant community were able to finally have the tax equity they deserve by being included in the Cal Earned Income Tax Credit. And so, I think, we have to keep pushing. It remains unfair that those who are working the hardest are being paid the least and often left out still. But I know that we will continue to get there if we continue to stand together and support each other. So thank you so much, Sam. It's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're doing well. And I just can't wait to continue to work together.
Likewise. I really miss being in Los Angeles. I would have probably stopped by to visit. Sadly, we can't do that anymore.
Yes. All right. Well, take care.
You too.